Hello and welcome to Case Management Practice 2. This is the first of our video tutorials where we'll be examining the assessment requirements for the course, and this is a video that will look at the Assessment 1 process and work as a guide for students to help you to achieve the outcomes required in Case Management Practice 2 course for the assessments. So they're quite onerous assessments, and they're built around issues of mandatory reporting and negligence and abuse in case management. Now, it's got to be said, it's almost 100% around working with children in child protection services, but there are a number of curly little questions that are, there's one scenario that's built around elder abuse and your responsibilities and knowledge of working with elder abuse. And we will discuss this throughout the course. I'll provide you with videos to help you work through some of these case studies because they're quite complex, and it's worthwhile watching these videos to help you. So let's make a start. We're on the course page here. As we're on the course page, we're going to go down to the two key areas that you need to focus on for the assessments. One is the subject information section here. And if we open that up, that looks like this, and you can download the subject and assessment guide. So that's the first bit, and here's an outline of our 4 assessments. So we've got Assessment 1, a mandatory reporting report and an understanding of duty of care. Assessment 2 is the client assessment forms for our key case study family, which is Lily Chen and her children, Jasmine and Tyson, as well as 3 case management plans for each of our clients, Lily and Jasmine and Tyson. And then there's a short answer questionnaire. Assessment 2 is quite a large assessment, it needs to be pointed out. So I think you'll need to pay attention for that one. And Assessment 3 is a practical assessment workshop that you attend in week 10, as well as Part B, which you need to provide by week 13, which is short answer questions about your experiences and your understanding and takeaways from the course. So they're the limits of our assessment. And the second part of our assessment is, if we go back to the main page, the templates for assessments are here. So if we go into the templates for assessments, let me show you what this looks like. Here you'll find the formats where you can download and complete your assessment forms. And we're going to follow this process for you to help you understand what you're required to do. So let's go and have a look at one of these templates for assessments. And here we are, template for assessment. I've just got to try and move a menu out of the way. I don't think you can see that. But so this is your template for assessment. The red text here, change this to your student number and your student name. Just replace this, save this document with your name. Student name, case management 2, assessment subject number 1, and save the document with your name on it, because that's always handy for the assessors when they're trying to download and read who's done this. It's due in week 1. It's the first trimester of 2018. You've got to put in about 700 to 1,000 words. That's not actually going to be accurate. You're going to be much nearer 1,500 words. This is going to be quite a big assessment. So let's have a quick look at what this requires you to do. Now, first of all, we're going to have a look at the mandatory reporting guide. So the Assessment 1 Part A requires that you follow links to go online and complete the mandatory reporting guide. And here's a link down here. You can copy and paste this link or just click and follow up this link to go online and have a look at the website, the New South Wales website. Let's bring that up. So we've just followed that link from the document that you've been provided with, and here we are. We're in there now. As you go through this process, you're meant to select. You go read the case study, and if we look at the case study, we can see Judy's 15-year-old girl. She's homeless. She has been sleeping in a park, and she was sexually assaulted the night before. She claims that she's been raped. and she complains of some bleeding as well. That's pretty much the total. She's 15. She's been raped. She's homeless. She's come into you as a worker in the centre, and you're required to follow this through. So as we go through the mandatory reporting guide, it's a little bit in the wrong way, in the wrong direction, but we're going to report an issue of sexual abuse here. Now, there's other ways that you can report here. Have a look. There's unborn children, care of concern, relinquishing care. Some of these might be for older people, psychological harm, physical abuse and neglect. These could all apply to older people and sexual abuse as well. But in this case, it's a younger person. And for Judith, we're going to report on sexual abuse. So we're going to follow that link here. As we look at this, we can see that there are a number of choices. And if you don't understand what these mean and you need to read through these, please choose the sexual abuse concern you have for a young child or person. And sexual abuse of a child aged 0 to 15 years old, is that what you're complaining about for Judith? Yes. Sexual abuse of a young person 16 to 17? No, Judith's 15. And a young person, a child or young person with problematic sexual behaviours towards others? No, we're not observing that. So we're just going to select that. If you're not clear about this, you can follow the questions definitions over here. And by clicking this link, this will give you feedback on what you need to think about when you're making that choice in this report. We go to page 2. Did the child make a clear and ambiguous statement of sexual abuse? Yes, she did. Again, these definitions down here to help you understand what these things mean. And some of these questions can be a little bit curly. Are you aware of underage marriage? Oh, sorry, B, are you aware the child has been sexually abused even though he or she hasn't told you? Well, Judith has told us. So we're going to select no for that. That's a little bit curly, that question. Down here, C, are you aware of an underage marriage? No, we're not aware of an underage marriage. And we keep going forward. And do you have concerns about the safety of well-being? Do you have other concerns? Yes, we do. And we're going to think about detailing Judith's circumstances, being homeless. She's slipping out. She's got some medical problems. There's a whole range of issues that we're going to need to identify from the case study that we've got. And you'll need to articulate them in the assessment. Now, we'll be looking at these assessments in the Zoom classes in far greater detail. We'll be looking at the case studies, and we'll be going through to help you to have a full picture of the support needs of Judith that will answer this question for you. So I encourage you to come on to the Zoom sessions to participate in learning about how we're going to follow through with this and to get a full picture of the information. If you're not able to make the Zoom sessions, there will be recordings available. Let me show you where you can find those recordings. If we go down to Zoom Online Classroom, you will find the Zoom Online Classroom here. You can join the classes in Zoom here. Just press start the meeting, and the recordings of various classes will be down here. If nobody comes to the classes, there will be no recordings. So you've got to be in it to win it, really. If there's something you don't know, come to the Zoom classes. We'll be talking about it. If nobody comes, there won't be any information. It'll be assumed you know. Okay, so let's go back to our assessment case. Oh, sorry, we're back on the mandatory reporting guide over here. And so we've got to go next. We're going to have to write some information here. We're going to write A, B, and C, and we're going to add that information to our report. Are we concerned about other young people? So maybe it's a school teacher, for example, and you have multiple reports of abuse. We're not clear about that. There's one rape that is being alleged, and we're going to click finish here. And here's our report. We come to our final report, and here it says generate PDF. And you need to click this and save the PDF because you need to upload this in your assessment for the case study. Now, you're also going to have to come back and do this for your second case study as well, because you might want to find information out. And we're using the mandatory reporting guide, this New South Wales process, to help us understand processes to follow now for each case study. So Here we go. So you use this as a tool because this will give you information. This is what you do. This is the final decision. Mandatory reporting guide, final decision. Immediate report to the Child Protection Helpline, phone 132 111. And if you think the child is in immediate danger, phone 000. How serious is the bleeding that Judith has reported to you? Do you need an ambulance, or could you take her in a car to a local hospital to get treatment? One thing is for sure, she's going to need to go for some treatment. There's some other information we need to get. And in a way, this is not the first thing you do. If you have somebody come along and say, I've been raped in the park, can you help me? Don't, excuse me, well, I'll just make this mandatory report. And then you go online and do this. You wouldn't do that. You would talk to the person, get an understanding of their situation, and then follow up. And so in Judy's case, we definitely go to the hospital, aren't we? So here's some more details about support that you can get understanding this process. And there's the information, additional comments, A, B, C. So one of the things, A, primarily, you're going to have to go to hospital because Judith's got some medical health needs. She's going to need some emotional support. She's going to need somewhere to stay. She's going to need some food. After the medical help, she might need food. She might need food before the medical help, depending on how she feels. She might be a bit shaky, and who knows. She's definitely, even if she seems resilient, she is at some point going to require some emotional support. And the best people to do that would be her family. So you would need to try and be steering her towards understanding why she's not with her family, and where she might find some other emotional support if, for example, she's a victim of abuse at home, or she is reporting that. So you certainly wouldn't put her back in an environment where she is at risk again. So some of these things need to be considered. So let's go back to our assessment. This is the PDF. Generate the PDF. Make sure you're generating the PDF and including that with your assessment. This needs to be attached after this. You won't be able to attach it to this document. This is your a document that you upload as well. So we've gone here, we've done that, we've completed the mandatory reporting guide, and now we're going to answer some questions to see generate the PDF. Answering these questions, and you'll need the PDF to answer some of these. Has the relevant decision tree been selected? Well, if you followed the information that we've given you in the video, yes. Does the mandatory reporting guide contain detailed information relevant to the case study? So these are the extra things we're talking about: medical help, emotional support, food, housing, that sort of thing, long-term and short-term and immediate needs being met. Significant indicators have been identified. These were the at-risk. She's homeless. She is a victim of violence. So this is seen as a complex case now, because somebody who's just walked in, they're homeless, there for some reason, there's no other issues, magically they've become homeless. Maybe she's a teenager who's just walked out of her home. She would not be seen as having complex needs, but now she has a number of complex needs, and this creates a situation that you need to carefully identify: medical needs, emotional support needs, homelessness needs. She's got no clean clothes that you're aware of, for example. She needs immediate support, and she's vulnerable, and she would be especially vulnerable to be just left with no support. She's got a legal situation going on as well. You're going to take her to hospital. The doctors would be informed that she's been complaining of being raped, and they would call the police as a matter of course, because they have a duty of care and their responsibilities will need to be met. They would take a rape kit, and they will make sure that evidence is preserved of her assault. And these are important processes that would need to occur for Judith. So being aware of this, the intervention strategies, you would list them in terms of what is the most immediate. Well, does she seem shaky? Does she need a cup of tea and a biscuit, or a meal? If not, she needs to go to hospital to get the rape kit done and the bleeding sorted out. In the meantime, she's going to need you to get some information from her about next of kin, emotional supports. Can she go home? If she can't, you need to arrange some other alternatives for her. What would they be? And depending on your situation, which state you're from and which town you're from, which region you're in, what are the resources that are available to you. You might not have the massive resources of a large city, so you might have a one-stop shop where there's a community service agency that has to manage everything. You might have specific sexual assault support agencies that have accommodation attached for young people at risk. That would be very rare. You might have a generic sexual assault centre or a domestic violence abuse service where they provide accommodation, and any of these would be a suitable strategy in the short term if the parents or another responsible adult cannot be arranged to provide emotional support. Now, in the medium to long term, or I suppose medium term, you're going to need to find, if she's not got any accommodation through family and support, you're going to need to make sure that she's okay for a few days to stay somewhere where she's supported and she's emotionally supported, as well as housed and fed, and has access to other resources like clean clothes, and she might need an income, for example. What about school? She's 15, she's underage. What's happening in terms of that? Does she have other support needs? She might have substance abuse problems. She might have a history of mental health or sexual abuse. There's a whole raft of things that you'd need to investigate. So you'd need a place for her to be so that she can be referred to an organisation that can help her by investigating those things. So there's a whole raft of intervention strategies that you need to identify. And here you only need to write dot points. You don't need to write a paragraph. There's no point writing a big paragraph. Just get that information, bang it in there really quickly. You've only got 1,000 words to write a 6-page assessment. So dot points will be fine. If you're not writing sentences, you will not be, it won't be found against you. Writing big paragraphs to hide the fact you don't know what you're saying, that's not going to help in this situation. Either you know the right information, you can write as a dot point, or you don't. So question 2, based on your completed mandatory reporting guidance of the following, who would you report to? Well, who would you report to? You would report to the whoever's listed, the child wellbeing unit in the mandatory reporting guide. So if we go back to, here's the final New South Wales, immediately report to the Child Protection Helpline. This is a copy of that mandatory report, by the way. This is a PDF download, and this lists the information. It's a 2-page thing, and additional comments: medical, shelter, food, emotional support, trauma counselling. There's some other information that you can list down. If you don't list more than that, that's going to be fine. We're only demonstrating that you understand the process here. You know that information needs to be identified and written down. So don't feel that you have a requirement to write big sentences. Who would you report to? Child Wellbeing Unit. Okay. What would be the grounds that she's been victim of sexual assault? How would you make the report? Well, you'd make the report on the phone hotline. How quickly would you need to make the report? You'd need to make the report that day, but you wouldn't make the report until after you'd dealt with everything. Your primary care requirement is to support Judith. Okay, so do that. You're not required to do things that are untoward. You know, the reporting element. As I said, the doctors and nurse will call the police. It's like the police will intervene before you get anywhere. And while they're talking to Judith, going, what's happened? How can we support you? And discussing her situation, you can be on the phone, making some phone calls to services, making sure you've got an arrangement so that as soon as Judith is finished being seen by a hospital and the police, you will be able to go and take her in the car to that other support agency, whether it's her family or whether it's an organisation that you set up for it. How could you find the services to refer the young people to? Well, Info Exchange, or you call organisations, Centre for Sexual Assault, for example. You could talk to the hospital social worker if you don't know. In a way, this is kind of doubling up because it's sort of your job, isn't it? Info Exchange is a good one. You can even just Google these days. Google's a fine resource for community workers. So don't worry about that. A whole raft of things here. In your own words, discuss how this has informed you about some of the complexities. Well, you need to answer that as a personal thing. Again, dot points. You're not writing a paragraph about how you felt fulfilled and things like this. Just explain what it is you found was something you hadn't understood, something that you understood, or some information that you think you might need to know. So what you found out, what you already knew, and what you think you might need to know as well. And if Judith was 17 years of age, what would be the outcome? Well, she's a victim of rape and she's under the age of 18. She's still technically a child. So possibly not very much difference. Let's move on to part 2 of the assessment. Part B. Part B, we've got a different case study. We've got Kate. You're Kate, a juvenile justice worker, and you're working with Amy. So she's been involved in criminal activities, or at least civil activities. She might have an ABO. She might have some involvement with the police about antisocial behaviours. It might not be necessarily criminal. Okay, so you've been working with her for 6 months, so you've got a relationship with her. She's now disclosing that she's seeing a boyfriend who's called Ali, who's a 28-year-old man, and that she's been taking pornographic photographs with him. He's known to supply drugs to underage people, and that you're concerned about that. And you are required to address this process. Now, again, go back to the mandatory reporting guide and download a mandatory reporting guide. Follow this through. Now, the first question is, what would you list it under? Is it abuse? Well, it's again, she's a victim of being 14 years old taking pornographic photographs, which is a sexual abuse crime. So it's a sexual abuse. So you'll follow that through. You're also worried about Amy being at risk of being young and easily manipulated and vulnerable to become addicted to substances. We're not really clear what those substances are, but any substances at that tender age, even alcohol, can have quite a damaging effect on Amy's ability. She might have all sorts of problems if she gets any sense of sort of addiction. And young people at that age have very significant problems often of making good decisions in their lives. So you're required to try and assist Amy to understand her situation about and vulnerability to a range of things. Also, is she engaged in school? Because at 14, it's important she stays in school just to finish her basic school. So what additional information would you need from Amy before making a report? It says you are, and then it says she. We're talking about Kate. It's a little bit confused, this assessment, but as Kate, what additional information does Kate need? Well, she needs to know as much as possible about Ali. Where does he hang out? What's his name? What are the other supports available to Amy? Think about Amy's situation. Is she in school? Does she have friends? Are her friends involved with that? Do her parents know what she's doing? Is she got parents? What's she doing with her days? All sorts of information around that. So understanding Amy's, again, dot points, understanding Amy's lifestyle and circumstances, education, social and family details, and Ali, knowing as much as possible about Ali, because Ali will be reported to the police for being a paedophile. And this is very important that this occurs, because he really is a blight on society, and he is exactly the sort of person that needs to be reported. We also need to worry that Amy might be upset about this. So are we going to tell Amy about it? That's not a question that's put down here, but personally, that would be a call for the worker on the day. Who knows? Depends how Amy is seeming about that. I wouldn't necessarily feel obliged to tell Amy anything, by the way. What skills would be helpful for you to implement discussing concerns? Well, you need to show some empathy. You need to build rapport. You need to be able to talk to Amy at her own level. You need to be able to help Amy understand good and bad choices and not preach to Amy. And as much as possible, understanding the rights of children, how you can encourage children to make choices for themselves, that you want Amy to walk away from the relationship with Ali. And as a woman to a girl, you can say, you know, we can sometimes become victims of men. Let's be that clear. Okay. Considering the risk of harm concerns, complete the following questions. What would the grounds be for your report? Well, photographs of a sexual nature of somebody under the age of 18. That is the list. That is the legal report situation. How would you make the report? Well, follow the mandatory reporting guide and see what you come up with there. And how quickly would you need to make the report? Well, I'll be making the report that day, and there's no reason you can't contact the police. And you might need to talk to the police and say, you know, this is what I need to do. But have a look at the mandatory reporting guide outcomes for that solution. Okay, read the following case study. We're on part C now. Again, dot point forms on here. Part C. So this is a recent addition to the case studies, and this is about elder abuse. And we're not specifically looking at elder abuse on this course. So let's be clear about this. As a case manager for a health service unit working for the elderly, you've been asked to investigate a possible situation of elder abuse. Your two clients, Alan and Patricia, are residents of the Lonsdale nursing home and have been there for the last 6 months. Their daughter, Lisa, has rung you to state she's concerned they are being abused, as they're often not showered, they have bruising on their arms, and the reports that the staff at the nursing home denies any abuse. You're aware there have been similar reports from the nursing home, from the same nursing home prior to this, and prior to your appointment, you're informed Patricia committed suicide by taking an overdose of medication. Okay, so what is your duty of care here in the situation? So you need to write down what is the duty of care. Here's your duty of care. You have a duty of care as a health services unit worker for the elderly. Your clients are the elderly. Because somebody has made a complaint, you are required to formalize that complaint. So the mandatory reporting guide only focuses on children. So I'm going to invite you guys, if you want to know what to do, to go looking on Google. I Googled reporting older people, and there's an elder abuse toolkit, online elder abuse toolkit here. The bottom line is for elder abuse is this. If we suspect that an older person or a class of older people, meaning a group, are being abused, you have a duty of care to report that to the right authorities. Now, if anybody punches anybody in the world, you call the police, don't you? And there's no difference here. The fact that this is systemized and that it's in a care situation, they will investigate it. Now, there's not necessarily circumstances where elder abuse is occurring. This may not be the case. There's possibly an overly concerned young child of the older person who is worried that their family members are not getting as much care as they want, and that's understandable. That doesn't necessarily mean neglect or abuse is occurring. Older people can bruise if they're being, for example, lifted. Older people bruise very easily, and the bruises, as we get older, take a long time to heal. So they seem to look much worse than they necessarily are, but that doesn't necessarily indicate abuse, especially if the older person slips. You might grab a hold of that person a little bit harder to make sure they're not falling over, and then they're bruised. So, okay, bruises might be an indication of abuse, but not necessarily an indication of abuse. And so in this case, your job isn't to make a judgment and to make, you have a responsibility to call the police to say that you've been informed of this. There have been other reports of concerns, and if the police become involved, it's likely that circumstances will change for the older people. At the same time, you can provide support to the older person. As the health services unit worker for the elderly, you can go in and work to encourage these older people to self-advocate and to say yes or no they've been abused. Now, again, there's issues of cognitive ability. Is there dementia, for example? And some of these things can also blur the lines between is abuse really occurring or is it not occurring? And here's the thing, one of the things are patterns. So if there's a patterns of bruises on people, you know, people might have bruises on their arms, for example, because they've been held when they're falling over, but not everyone would have the same bruising on their arms, would they? And you'd need to think about how it, and you would want someone to report on how they're holding somebody. It's not your job to investigate, it's the police's job, but that is how abuse is identified, by patterns of neglect and behavior, where certainly more than one person is being undernourished, etc. And if people are, more than one person is saying, yes, we are being abused, if they're the clients of the elder person's home, then that's the case. So your response here: call the police, advocate for the older person. So identify what legislation might be available in this case. Well, the same legislation that would be available to anybody who is being physically abused by anybody, even in the streets, somebody they know or they don't know. So somebody would be being assaulted. There's no mandatory reporting required anywhere in Australia, by the way, for older people. It's not, if you suspect elder abuse, by all means, do the right thing. Call the police. There's no requirement for you to do that, though. There's no legislation anywhere in Australia about doing that. So if you're unclear about this, have a look on the Elder Persons Toolkit, Abuse Toolkit. Identify what support services you would suggest for the daughter. Well, what about advocates? What about visitors and ongoing welfare checks? It's important that if there is a governing organisation, maybe there's a nursing home or a older person's home, and that that it's being managed by an organisation, you might want to go to the head office of the organisation. In Victoria, for example, Winteringham is quite a large-scale operation. Go to the head office and talk to them and say, listen, my relative is in this facility and I'm concerned. And that can trickle down from the top and possibly have a lot more effect than lots of other things. So ongoing visits are important. Making sure people are not left isolated, and that as much as possible people are making a note and taking notes of times and dates where changes occur. Here's a bruise that's just occurred here, or somebody's been reporting a fall, or this person seemed to have not been given drinks for the whole day and they're obviously dehydrated. You can look at this by checking the condition of the skin and things like this. So again, older persons welfare support agencies, they can be quite important in terms of trying to identify where abuse is occurring, okay? And this kind of answers two questions, okay? This situation suggests a complex case. This situation suggests sorry, it's a phone call there. Okay, so we're on to question 4. This scenario suggests this is a complex case. Identify and describe what model of case management might be appropriate for immediate and future intervention. Well, again, these sorts of things haven't really been identified on the course, but I would suggest a brokerage model of case management. As a worker, you're not a primary provider of services to this older person's accommodation. So you're brokering other services to come in and be involved in providing ongoing care for these individuals. So you want to go and call a number of different services and ensure that the family and the client are well satisfied and supported in the future, and that somebody's watching the organisation with a view to understanding if abuse is occurring. And finally, describe what might be the funding implications for the nursing home. Well, if they're found to be negligent, the funding implications are they could lose their funding. Basically, that is all you need to point out. If they're found to be negligent, they could lose their funding because they could be defunded and they can have all their residents moved to other accommodations. So they have a duty of care to their clients, and if that's pointed out to them, and I'm sure that in most cases it doesn't need to be, but if it needs to be, they might then be prompted to respond to concerns about abuse from people. So that is a bottom line for this situation. That's pretty much the end of this assessment. Okay, any questions? Join us on Zoom for a look at how to manage this problem, okay? And how we're going to go through this in the Zoom so that people can ask questions there. So come online if you're still unclear. Great. All right, looking forward to seeing you online. Take care. Bye.